The 9 don'ts of creating online learning. Hi, I'm Laura. I'm an online course creator and coach. And we're in an unusual state in the world right now. Teachers are being asked to create e-learning for their students at a moment's notice. This is a source of some anxiety, I am sure. I know it's hard to shift from in-person courses to online learning and teaching. I created this video to help educators who are at loose ends try to wrap their heads around the difference between traditional classroom teaching and online teaching. My hope is that you get something from this that you can use to help you feel more comfortable creating online learning if you've never done this before. So 1, don't assume you'll be able to adjust your teaching on the fly. In the classroom, you have the students in front of you. You can see what they're doing. You can tell by the expressions on their faces and by the body language whether they're getting you or not. And you can make adjustments to your teaching. This is not the case in online learning. You're making it all ahead of time. And so what you need to do is kind of think back to the last few times you taught this lesson and what were the stopping points? What were the things that stumped your students? And try to address those in your lesson. And you also are going to try to build in ways to see student thinking so that you can address that in discussions. So number 2, don't start a lesson without clear objectives, outcomes, and assumptions. All right, we know what objectives are. They're based on our standards. They're very clear to us, but maybe not so much to students. So you need to write it in a way that students know exactly what they're supposed to get out of this. They're not going to be able to follow along if they don't even know where they're going. They'll wander off somewhere. You also have to have them understand the outcomes that you're expecting. This is super important for you, though, when you're creating the course. You have to be very clear on what outcomes you want the students to achieve so that you can create your lesson properly. If you're not clear on what outcome you want them to achieve, then your lesson is going to be just as muddy. So assumptions are super important also, especially when you're setting up a session in which students are going to be going through the material without you. You need to be clear at the beginning. Hey guys, in order to be successful at this lesson, you already need to know this, and I'm assuming that you already know this, and I'm assuming that you already know that. If you don't know any of those things, go back to the review material, or here's a link to review that stuff. Do it before you get in this lesson, otherwise you won't be as successful as you could be. So these assumptions are very important. You can't make up for their stuff along in the fly. You can't, you have to build it for the middle and for a set student that you know, and you have to assume that they know some things already. So you can write out your assumptions at the beginning just in your notes, but as you're going through and building the lessons, go back and make sure, I mentioned this in my lesson and I didn't put this in the assumptions that I assumed students already knew. Go back and add it to your assumptions. You can record your assumptions bit last to make sure that you've covered everything and you've given your students exactly what to expect. This is also really helpful for those kids who already know all this stuff. When you say, here are my assumptions, that what you know, they'll be able to tell if this is a very basic course, and they won't get bored so easily because they know you're talking to people who don't know the things that they know. So they might give you a little wiggle room on that. Number 3, don't create long videos with no breaks. This one's going to be a long video with no breaks. Don't do that. You want to do 2 to 5 minute videos. Students are going to just wander off if you talk any longer than that. Break up what you're doing with learning activities so they can apply what they just learned. But also, the brain can only stay focused for a set amount of time before stuff starts falling out of it. It can only hold a certain amount of things in working memory. And so you want to give the brain a chance to shift into diffuse memory, into diffuse mode, so that it can start building connections between what they just learned and the stuff they already know. So find some way to break this up a little. And I'll go over some learning activities and stuff in the next slide. But the break could be something as simple as get up and do 10 jumping jacks. And that not only gives the brain something entirely different to think about, and it starts doing its magic, but it also gets more oxygen flowing through the student and therefore through the brain. They stay awake, they're more engaged, but it's a surprising thing too, because most students aren't expecting you to tell them to get up and go do something physical, completely unrelated to the class. Keep in mind that this is not the only course your students are taking, and you need to build for them to learn. So short videos, plenty of breaks, learning activities in between. So that brings us to number 4. Don't insert learning activities that don't move the learning forward. If you want students to do something with what you just taught them, make sure that it is going to help it stick. Whatever you chose helps it stick more. Don't just put stuff in for the sake of breaking things up. We've already talked about the brain focused and diffuse mode, so those are pretty important. That's not just for the sake of breaking things up. But you can do things like that are as simple as, okay, pause the video, turn around, don't look at the screen, and write down all of the steps that you can remember from what we just went over. And that gives the student a break. It gives them a moment to reflect back and think about what they just learned. And that's really valuable. So a learning activity can be that short and simple. And then you just keep moving. Another one can be a challenge, like I'm going to put a problem up on the board. I want you to pause the video, see if you can work it out. And then when you can continue the video, I'll show you how I worked it out and we can compare. That gives the students something to do. It's a learning activity that moves the learning forward. Another one could be reflection. So if you're reading a novel and or you've just watched a clip of a video, you can say, okay, in your reflection journal, I want you to pause the video now and write down how, if this has ever happened to you or someone you know, and reflect on this. I want to know if you've experienced something like that. So go ahead and pause and write a paragraph in your reflection journal. So these kinds of learning activities they don't have to be digital. I mean, kids are working on paper right here. If you want to see what they're doing, you can have them take a picture and upload it. But for the most part, you don't want to be inundated. You want to give them a chance to work with stuff and not have it be I got to get it right or I'm going to get a 0 kind of thing. It is going to be work. Okay, so the next one, number 5. Don't insert multi-question, Googleable quiz questions. We all know that Google and online quizzes are the bane of our existence. We know that. Don't use them. Don't even try. It causes nothing but heartache. So what you do want to do, though, is maybe insert a single quiz question. And this is really key. If there's one question, students are less likely to go off and try to find the answer somewhere else. If they see 5 questions, they don't want to mess with all that. They're just going to go find the answer somewhere. Well, if you do one question, they might give that one a try. But here's the key. You have to write really good answer choices. And what do I mean by really good answer choices? You've taught this material before, and you know what errors in thinking come up with students. So you build one right answer, obviously, but you also, the other 3 answers are going to be giving you insight into errors of thinking. So for example, if I'm doing something on grammar and I know that that this is what happens when students don't remember the difference between adverbs and adjectives. So I'll put an answer choice that if they choose that, I know they forgot the difference between adverbs and adjectives. Or one of my choices could be, this is when students forget that prepositional phrases end with a noun. They chose a not a noun. Well, I know they forgot it ends with a noun. So that gave me insight into their thinking. It takes a little effort to create those wrong questions that give you insight, which is why I say only one question. It's a lot of work, but it's worth doing because now you have data. You understand what your students are messing up on. If 50% of your students chose the one that lets you know they don't know the difference between adjectives and adverbs, then guess what you're going to be focusing on in your discussions? That difference again. So you do the work that gives you what you need as the teacher. All right, so let's look at number 6. Don't forget to support and enrich. You're teaching, you're building your lesson for the student, the middle of the road student, but you also have students who need resource support. You have students who are English language learners, and you have students who are gifted and talented and need enrichment. So how do you work that into your lesson? Well, you put those supports in. So for example, you might put a checklist. You might put a vocabulary with images, or you might put, the steps for someone to do something if they don't remember how to do it. Put those in a support section. And then for enrichment, you can put in, maybe a website for them to go visit and learn about, or a game to play, or an extra challenge problem. Those can be under support and enrichment. Don't focus on them in your regular lesson, but leave them in a place that they're easy to spot. And if students need to get to them, label them very well so that students know, I need a little help with this part, so I'm going to click on this. But you can also contact students directly by email or chat or however you do it, and let them know, hey, I've got this stuff in here, it might help you, or I've got this stuff in here, I think I want you to try this challenge problem. And that lets students know that you're there and you're working on them and you're building for them. All right, so let's talk about building community. Number 7, don't forget to build community. This is really important here in this particular situation. We're practicing social distancing. In some cases, school's the only place where students get to see their friends. And so they're going to get a feeling of isolation being home. So you can help with that. You can build community inside your class. If you have the option for a discussion board, this is a really good way to do that. Build a discussion board, set some rules. This is where we do class stuff, and maybe create a social discussion board that say all the funnies and all the memes go over here, but stay focused on the class stuff over here. And check in on the social and engage and be fun. Students want to know that you're there. But in the class discussion one, you also want to use things like open-ended questions. And don't jump in and answer or say, hey, great job. If somebody answers an open-ended question, you respond with, well, these were some interesting points. Does anyone have a different argument, or can anyone expand on so-and-so's argument? Try to get the students to engage with each other to help them build some connection and make them feel less alone. This also gives you an opportunity to see their thinking. So remember, we talked about ways for you to find their thinking. We talked about the quizzes with feedback, and we talked about, the quizzes that give you insights. We didn't talk about quizzes with feedback, completely different thing. But you also want to be able to see their thinking on the discussion board, so you need to be intentional with the questions you're asking. All right. With the power of community building, don't underestimate the power of live video chats. So if you're going to be out for 2 weeks, maybe you want to schedule 2 live video chats each week. And what these are good for is they allow question and answers. They allow you to address errors in thinking that you've seen through your well-written quiz questions or through your discussion board. And they allow you to address those things. They allow students to see each other live, and it gives you a chance to extend the learning just a little bit. Please, please, please don't just review everything you did in the videos. That would be the most boring thing in the world, and students wouldn't come to your live events. They have to be optional also, because we can't account for what's going on at home. So you do need to schedule them, make them engaging enough that students want to attend, but you also need to record them for those who are not able to attend. You need to provide the support all the way around. So cool thing about live chats is that it reminds the students that you're there. Your teacher is here and you're live. And you can tell them, if you need me, please reach out. I'm here for you. But you can also put in activities that they can do in small groups and in teams and kind of get them feeling like a class again. Number 9, don't think you have to do all of this alone. It's really important. You're not alone. And this is hard, but we're all in this together. There are thousands of teachers on Twitter alone pulling together resources for you. You can connect with teachers who teach your subject both on campus and off campus. And guys, divide and conquer. Work out different lessons, share materials. It is not, I mean, we have so many great lessons and great teachers out there who can work together and kind of share stuff. If you would like for me to create any other videos, if you would please put that in the comments and put your questions in the comments, I'll do my best to keep up with them as much as I can. And if you have some questions and I know somebody's already created great material, I'll answer with a link to their stuff. Because I know I can't answer every single question, but I'm happy to connect people. All right, the last bit is that I'm Laura Coulter. You can connect with me on Twitter at LVCoulter. And I also have lauracreatescourses.com. On that site, I have a free ebook on 25 activities to engage your online learner. Now, I run a business, but so it will ask you for your email address. Go ahead and put in your email address. I am okay if you unsubscribe after you get that book. I just want to give you some tools to help you. And I am perfectly fine with that. I just want to show up and be here for you. So I think I'm done, and I hope the book helps you. I hope this video helped you. And now I need a cup of coffee.